Hello, everyone. I'd like to say thank you very much for being here today. We really appreciate you all being on this incredibly difficult and dark day. Um, it's the darkest day in recent Jewish history, and it's made just a little bit lighter by being able to go through it with you all together. So thank you. I hope you're all carrying yourselves okay. This will be a space for reflection, for grieving together, for community. And so let's take the space that we need to move through this together. Um, before we do that, I'll just begin by acknowledging that we're dialing in from many corners of Australia and indeed beyond. I'd like to pay respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet all across the country and the globe, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, recognizing sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. This day is, of course, 1 year on from the horrors that befell the Jewish people in Israel on October 7th, where 1,200 souls lost their lives in unspeakable acts of horror and violence. It's a horrific day that we appreciate being able to commemorate together. So thank you for being on. Unfortunately, over 200 people were taken hostage that day, and many still remain in captivity in Gaza, 101 to this very day. Um, just before we dive on in, I'm just going to recognize that we're going to be moving with folks on mute, with the chat disabled to allow for the best possible presence of mind for all of us and to be able to be in community for these coming conversations. These coming conversations were pre-recorded conversations with some of our leading CEOs and activists from NIF grantees, from Ziv Stahl of Yesh Din, and from Avi Darbush of Rabbis for Human Rights, both of whom were unfortunately at the Otef, at the Gaza envelope on that day, and whose lives were unfortunately changed forever. But both of whom have rededicated to peace through their work each day, continue to do incredible work, and we're proud to be able to support that work. That's why we're featuring them. Um, it's a difficult hour and a difficult day to get them, and so these conversations have been pre-recorded for ease. So we will be screen sharing those in just a moment. But before I do that, I'd like to just recognize that we would like to be able to reflect this day looking to a brighter future. But of course, at the moment, things seem to be getting more difficult, more racked by war, by violence each day. And so while we continue to hope and pray for a ceasefire, while we continue to hope and pray for a hostage deal, at the moment, this is looking like a difficult period in our history. And we are seeing the violence continue not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank, in Lebanon. We see Iran attacking Israel and Israel considering responding to Iran. There is further prospects of war, and this is a day of tremendous difficulty for us all as we meet, knowing that our future is uncertain. But what is not uncertain is that we are together in community. We are united by our values to look for a better future, to look for peace, and we are united by our support for those who are building peace on the ground. So we will look to those people. We will hear from them just in a moment. But to set the scene, I wanted to begin with a quote from Gadia Hani, who read at Vivian Silva's eulogy. Vivian Silva was, of course, unfortunately brutally murdered on October 7th. She is a founder of many NAF grantees, was an incredible activist, an incredible woman who tragically lost her life at the hands of Hamas terrorists on October 7th. But speaking at her funeral, Gadia Hani summed it up beautifully when she said, "My dear Vivian, if you could hear me, I would want you to know that Hamas has not murdered your vision. You cannot kill compassion, solidarity, humanity, and yearning for a safe life. We must continue your journey, the journey towards a good and safe life in our homeland, to ensure that the October 7 disaster does not repeat itself." So let's be guided by that beautiful framing as we move into our first conversation. Thank you again for being here. We're so lucky to be joined by Avi
haven't. So where were you on October?
Sorry, folks. Was no one able to hear that? I apologize. We'll start that from the top.
We're so lucky to be joined by Avi Darbush, the CEO of Rabbis for Human Rights. So many of you will have heard and seen Avi when he was in Australia in April. Avi is Avi's the best. So we're so lucky to have him, and he needs no introduction. Avi, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael.
Avi, I thought I would just start out by asking you if you could tell us a little bit. A lot of us got to hear from you, but some of us haven't. So where were you on October 7th a year ago, and how was that day for you?
Yeah. So I was with my family in Kibbutz Nirim. It's a kibbutz on the border of Gaza, less than 2 kilometers from Pan Yunis. And actually, it was, as you know, it was Saturday, it was Simchat Torah, it was a holiday, but also it was the anniversary of the kibbutz. So we have like this holiday before, at the eve of October 6th. And then, as you know, it started around 6:30, all the alarms, the rockets. In 5 minutes, we started to hear gun shooting inside the kibbutz. So the kibbutz is really near the border. So it was the first kibbutz in our area that the Hamas soldiers, the terrorists, came into. And after I ran into the house and closed all the electric windows and locked the door and took the cell phones and the charger and told everyone to be quiet, and we shut down all the lights and the air condition and so on. We started to hear the Arabic commands near our window, our shelter window. And it all started a very long day, even more than that. Totally, it was more than 30 hours till the army evacuated us on Sunday afternoon to Eilat. The first 8 hours, it was without any army, just praying and holding the handle of the door. But we survived. Not all of us survived, but me and my family, thanks God, survived.
Thank you for sharing that, Avi. We were thinking of you this whole past year, and so glad to have you here, and so glad to hear that you're okay. How are you doing 1 year on as we come to the anniversary now?
So we still can't go back to our home. It's still a war zone. Now we are in Beersheba. We were 4 months in Eilat in an hotel. It's not, maybe it sounds nice, but it's not really nice. It's not a way to live as a family. We were in one floor, me and my wife, and my children in another floor, and her children in another floor. So it was really, it wasn't a way to be as a family. So after 4 months, actually, in November, we started to push for another solution because we understood that it will take a long time. And we pushed for, we tried or checked few alternatives, and we decided to come to Beersheba. Beersheba, it's what we call the capital of the Negev. It's a central city in the Negev, around 45 minutes from Nirim, so it is an advantage. There are people that are going, especially the farmers in Nirim, that are going each day to walk there. And also it's a place that we can have all the solutions for the older people and for the children and so on. So from around February, we are in Beersheba. We decided as a family, but it seems that all the community will be here for another year till next summer. And then we will see if we can go back to Nirim. There is a lot of work to do in Nirim. Actually, we started last month. They ruined all around 30 or 40 houses that got burned. So it started like the reconstruction of Nirim, or the area that was mostly hurt. Our house also has some kind of a damage, not very big, but there are a lot of other houses with damages, and also the infrastructures in our neighborhood and the neighborhood that was near the fence and really suffered the most. So we have a lot of stations in order to go back to Nirim. We are in a place that is better than Elat in terms of geography, and it's a house, and we can be together, all the family. So this is one of the processes that we have to move through. So this is the place that we are now.
And what is the feeling like there? Are people looking to be ready to move back? Is the kibbutz ready to be reunited? How are you all feeling?
Yeah, of course, it's different thoughts and feelings to each family and person, but generally, around 80% of the community is here in Beersheba. We started kind of a process of talking about going back and what do we feel and what is important for us. For example, I really love the fact that a lot of people are talking about the solidarity, especially towards Nir Oz. Nir Oz suffered more than us, and they are the neighboring kibbutz. It's 500 meters from Nirim. So they won't come back with us. It will take 3 years, maybe even more, for Nir Oz, because more than a quarter of the community was murdered and taken hostages, and a lot of, as we know, more and more hostages got killed in Gaza, also from Nirim. So most of the community is started to talk about going back. Of course, it depends on so many things that we still don't know right now. Starting with our security, we don't know what the situation will be when the army, the government will say, okay, now you can go back. But a lot of other questions about the area, the education. The area right now is really broken. You know, each time that I'm going to Nirim or to Sderot, to the area, you can feel it and see the destruction of that day or those days. And still, we have a war in Gaza, not in the way it was in the first days, but very big war. So there are a lot of questions, but generally, as a community, most of the people really want to come back, to go back to Nirim, and it will happen when we can do it.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm glad, and I know it's also uncertain. I know that we're talking just a few days before October 7th, and you've spent last night in bomb shelters. You nearly had to attend a wedding in a bomb shelter. So, yeah, what is the outlook for the region? How are you feeling about the prospect of Iran and all of this extra complication now?
Yeah, so this is amazing that we are now almost a year after October 7th. I think that nobody could anticipate it. I don't know if we can say maybe Netanyahu and his interest, and of course he has interest to make this war long, but I don't know if he or his government really thought of anything after October 7th, and it still seems very weird. We are worrying that there is no clear mission to that war, no clear strategy. Actually, we shouted for that for many years, 20 years in the area, that we need a clear strategy, and in order we thought that the diplomatic solution is needed. And of course, it was the opposite way around, like strengthening Hamas, weakening the Palestinian Authority, and without any thought, or with the thought that everything will be okay, we can suffer that. That is the war that we were inside and the children for many years. But of course, the problems, the big problems that you are trying to push away, there is a tendency for them to blow up in some point. And what is happening right now in Lebanon and Iran, it's really thing that we are very worried about. Again, it seems like sometimes even like we talked about it, like a kindergarten, like you did that and I'm stronger than you and I will show you and so on. And we have to be clear about what we want. And I think that even if I'm not talking about human rights, about what is happening in Gaza and is really devastating, and what is happening in the West Bank and right now in south of Lebanon and so on, we can talk about our interests. And it's very clear that the interest of Israel is to have a coalition in the region with Saudi Arabia, with, of course, the other countries around, with Egypt, with Jordan, and so on. And of course, we see some kind of this coalition that helped Israel even last night, to avoid suffering from Iran. So we need to have this clear vision. And in order to do that, of course, we must end the war. We are really invested in also the demonstration for the hostages that are still there. And we know that they are in terrible danger. And then we have to talk with the Palestinians. This is the only way. This is the only way to have this coalition. And this week, I don't know if you saw, but the Jordanian minister, inferior minister, just said it was really for us, the people that want peace, it was something that was inspiring. He said that Netanyahu talked about all the neighboring countries that are enemies for Israel and trying to destroy Israel. And he said that there are 57 countries, Arab countries here, and we are all united in guarantee the security of Israel. And in order to do so, of course, we need to push for Palestinian country and Palestinian solution. But we are invested in that. And again and again, we are avoiding that. Again and again, we are in the blame game and focusing on that we don't have any responsibility. Everyone is our enemies, and of course, everyone abroad is anti-Semitic and so on. And I'm not saying that, of course, everyone is friendly, and there are enemies. People from Iran, as we saw, Hezbollah and Hamas, of course. But in order to isolate those enemies, we need to have a bigger coalition of the most, this is the big population as citizens and also as countries that really want quiet and prosperity and peace. And it doesn't look like this government, of course, with very extreme ministers like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich really have this idea. The whole idea, of course, I can't say this is the idea of the Likud. Like, of course, originally this is not the idea of the Likud, but this is the idea of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and very radical right-wing messianic religious streams that think that God is working for us, and as long there will be war, it will be better because we can conquer and push away and bring settlements into Gaza, into Lebanon, into, I don't know, wherever, to Jordan and to Egypt and so on. So this is really dangerous, and we must avoid that, and we must block that.
I mean, you're so right. I saw that. I was moved by that speech, that statement that the Jordanian foreign minister gave, and also by the support from civil society. I saw that Maozi Zinon responded, and he said, "You do have a partner for peace. It might not be this ultra right-wing government, but it's me, and it's people like me in Israeli civil society. It's people like you. So maybe you can tell us about the work of Rabbis for Human Rights right now and all that they're doing so we can learn about the people who are the partners for peace right now on the ground."
So Rabbis for Human Rights, actually from October 7th, we are doing so much more in the West Bank. It started with a very big humanitarian project. Again, we are not a humanitarian organization. We are a human rights organization, but the situation was so terrible, and our partners, the farmers, the mayors, the shepherds said, right now we need medical aid, right now we need food, so can you help us? And we did. But right now we are focusing again more in protective presence. We have coordinators, field coordinators all around, like in Nablus area, a Palestinian one, in Awarta, and in the Jordan Valley area, another one, and in Mesafer Yatta and the South Hebron Hills, another one. And we are each week we are for 2, 3, sometimes 4 days with the communities, with the shepherds, with the farmers on the ground. Right now, actually, we are working very hard in order to start olive harvest campaign. It should be starting on Thursday after Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Kippur. We hope that we can do it, of course, in this very terrible situation. You must understand that yesterday when I was in the shelter, our Palestinian worker, Samir from Awarta, called me to ask if I'm okay. And of course, they were also on the ground, and there was rockets, and they don't have shelters. After he asked me, he said, you know that we don't have shelter in Awarta. I'm with my family. I have 2 little children and my wife outside in the road. We are just hoping that nothing will happen. And parts of the missiles were on his brother's house. So we are, in a way, we all in the same, in this very small area of Palestinians and Israelis suffering from the same people and governments, and I should say men that are fighting each other. We are really hope that those small things that we can do, I'm not talking right now about ending the occupation tomorrow or something like that, but I'm talking about fighting the violations of human rights. And again, with protective presence, be there, bring a lot of volunteers to the ground. I must say that one of the 6 people that were murdered like a month ago in Gaza was our volunteer, Carmel Gad from Be'eri. She used to come to each year. She used to come to the olive peak in the field in the Nablus area. So again, a lot of people really want to do something, and we hope that we can in this terrible situation.
Wow. Yeah. I think there is nothing more representative of you and of people like you who are at NIF grantees in Israeli civil society, who are at Dafka doing more work than ever before to fight for peace and to build solidarity. It's the only message we can hear right now. It's what we need right now, because I know that you know that there will be a day that will come where there will be peace, but I believe it more every time when I speak to you. So Toda, Avi. Maybe we can leave on an optimistic note like that. Can you tell us what are you holding on to for hope? What is giving you a vision of a better future right now?
Yeah, so I must say about Rabbis for Human Rights, we talked about like the professional work of human rights, but we of course have the vision, the rabbinical vision and the Jewish vision of again of peace and justice and equality and so on. So this is really important because when I talked about the other people, unfortunately now in the government, they use the religion, they use for me, very deep culture, Jewish culture, in order to harm and to promote Jewish supremacy and violence and so on. And I'm not saying it's the same phenomena, but as the Hamas, of course, using the Islam in order to do this kind of massacre that he did, and also harm their people, the Palestinians. So my hope is really rooted in these volunteers and people. We have wonderful field workers, young people, Jews and Palestinians that are doing each day this work. Only last Thursday we had a tour in South Hebron Hills, and we met a lot of Palestinian communities. We also were, of course, it's every time it's like that. We saw the violence of some of the settlers, or we call it actually Jewish terror in the area. So my hope is that we as people, because we are the majority, people that really want peace and believe in other human beings, we can be more vocal, we can be more courageous, we can be more persistent in order to win this fight, because this is in the basic place of the fight between good and bad, good and evil, like the old saying about the wolves, the bad wolf and the good wolf inside of us, that we should feed the good wolf. And actually, we are in days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when like Cheshbon Nefesh, we need to ask ourselves about. In Judaism, we are talking about Yetzer Hara. So again, we have kind of equal forces inside of us of good and evil, and we must choose. And I hope and I pray, and we are doing whatever we can in order for us as human beings and families and communities, and also as a nation and the Israeli society, to choose good. To choose actually in the values of the Declaration of Independence, to be in peace with our neighboring countries, to be part of the sustainable and prosperous Middle East, and have peace in our days in this new year, in order for our children to be in a good place. It's not about them. Of course, I'm really trying to hold this care for other human beings, and this is really important to understand what is happening in Gaza and Lebanon and in the West Bank in our name, but also thinking about the future of our children. And a lot of people here saying that they want a boring year after this very, very crazy year. So maybe it won't be like that, we know, but less exciting and better year, I hope.
I hope so too, Avi. I only hope it's more exciting because it's a peace deal, and that's the most exciting thing that we get. Definitely. So may there be a ceasefire deal, a hostage deal, and no more war.
Amen.
Avi, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being on, and it's always great to have you. So thank you.
Thank you. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Thank you all. We hope you enjoyed that first conversation, and as always, found Avi's reflections illuminating on this day, and his sense of purpose for the path forward. I certainly did. We'll move straight on to our second conversation. That's with Ziv Stahl of Yeshtin.
Ziv Stahl's joining us. Ziv is the executive director, the CEO of Yeshtin, one of the NIF grantees doing vital work to combat settler violence in the West Bank. And Ziv was, of course, in her childhood home in Kfar Aza on October 7th. Ziv, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Michael.
We really know how challenging this is, and we're so appreciative that you're joining us. Could I just ask you to briefly reflect on that day and to ground us in how that was, and so that we can understand from afar everything that you went through?
So I was visiting my family. I grew up in Kfar Aza, and I come there quite often to visit. I have a dad there. My mom passed away late June, so it was just a few months before. I also have two siblings with their families there, so a lot of nephews and nieces. And then I was just visiting. It was a holiday, but it seemed to be very quiet, so I wasn't really worried when I came. Sometimes I worry when I come. This time I wasn't. And I came the day before, on Friday, actually. And then we woke up Saturday morning. I was staying at my house with her family. We woke up to the sound of sirens and explosions. It was very intense, so we knew immediately that there was something like big happening. And we went to the safe room in my sister's house. We stayed there for a while. Quite soon after, we realized there was already terrorists in the kibbutz, but we had no clue like the magnitude of the situation. So we assumed that there's like maybe a small unit or a small group of terrorists, not something very extreme, and also assumed that it will be done like in 2 hours, not too scary. But then the hours went by, and it took a very long time. In the middle of the day at noontime, one of my nieces, which is she's a young adult, she's 21, was 21 at the time, and her boyfriend, both of them were sleeping in another neighborhood in the kibbutz, which is the neighborhood of the younger generation. They call them, it's the young people of the kibbutz. And that neighborhood was severely attacked by many terrorists. Not a lot of people survived from that neighborhood, and there's few people who are still hostages in Gaza. So they arrived to the house where we were, and my niece's boyfriend was severely injured. He got shot in both of his arms. So on top of like having to be quiet and hide from terrorists, we actually had to take care of him. We tried to get help for many hours and couldn't get anyone to come and take him to the hospital at least. So we all kind of like had to take care of him and make sure he's okay, stop the bleeding, and making sure he's still conscious and is kind of relaxed, not yelling, because it's really just picture the situation where you get shot and you have no Medicare, so you don't have anything to soothe your pain or any kind of treatment. And he's a medic, so he knows that he kind of told us what to do, at least in the beginning. And eventually we were rescued after 14 hours or so. He was taken to the hospital, and we stayed for another 4 hours in the kibbutz. It's kind of like a convenience store in the gas station in the entrance of the kibbutz. We were really worried the whole time about my sister-in-law, who from the early hours in the morning, she didn't reply to any of the messages and calls. We really tried very hard to like find out what's going on with her. At first, we assumed she might have went someplace else to another house to help someone. She used to be a therapist, so she did that a lot, and she worked a lot with people who has anxiety. And eventually, after 2 days, we learned that she was killed quite soon after the whole event began in the early morning. And so we found out like the fate of many others. Father lost more than 60 people and had 19 hostages. 5 of them are still in Gaza. And we don't know right now a lot about their fate, what happened to them or where they are. So yeah, it's been a challenging year. For us, I didn't return to the kibbutz yet. So people are kind of scattered in many places. Many are in Shfaim, which is kind of the hub of the kibbutz now. Planning on moving to another kibbutz, kind of in the area of Father, but much safer, for another year at least until they can maybe return home. So yeah, it's been very difficult.
Sorry, Ziv. Yeah, I have no words, but we were all so saddened and so hurt, and we were all thinking of you. You know, so many people know you and your work and everything personally, and so yeah. From here at NIF Australia, we can't even describe how much our heart goes out to you. But thank you for sharing. How are you doing now? How are you doing as we mark 1 year since that day?
I think I'm doing better in many senses and a little bit worse in others. So it took a long time, I think, to really understand and digest everything that happened. And I think I'm still in the process of understanding, and it's very like, I don't know if one can ever digest such a big event that I'm part of. But I think that the first month was really like a shock situation. So it took a long time to, first of all, know the facts because we were in a room most of the time. I think people on the outside knew in a way better about what's going on than we did. And it took a long time to, like, after we were rescued, to understand what happened. And it also took a long time to identify the victims and know what happened to everyone. It's a lot of people we know. It's a small community, so it was really scary, and the war is still going on at the same time. So I think it was like first few weeks that were really intense with a lot of funerals and shiva, like going to visit people and see that they're okay. And I think just more of a struggle to just like eat and breathe and sleep. And it was more like it was very intense. I don't know how to even describe it, like physically. And then I took 3 months of work, just being with my family and taking care of everyone. They left their homes without, like, I live in Tel Aviv. I got to go home eventually. I have my stuff, I have my house, but the rest of my family had to find a place to live, and then to kind of find in the first weeks clothes and furniture and everything that goes with like being kind of a refugee. It took a while before you could go back to Father to take some stuff, which is the situation now. So that was the first month, and then in January I came back to work, and I did it slowly, and I still am in a way kind of getting used to the new me, which is different in many ways. I still hope my memory and my energy will go back to the way they were before. It's not the best right now. But it's also been, so gradually I feel more myself in a way, and I have a routine, and I have a lot of support. But in many other ways, like the fact that I know better and like kind of starting to get out of the shock situation and being more like thinking about it and like processing everything that has happened and is happening still is very difficult and rough. And yeah, I think I'm starting to realize this would be a lifetime process and it won't be like over at some point. So it's just a process and you never know where it takes you in a way. So yeah, not the easiest. It's also been a year that is very intense, not for me in general in this area. We have a constant war. We have hostages still in Gaza that we are still trying to get out of Gaza and influence the government to actually close a deal with Hamas in order to save them. The sooner, the better, of course. But it's also been a horrible year for us in Gaza and West Bank. I think the West Bank is kind of overlooked maybe during everything that is happening. Now there's also a new, I don't know, peak in the Lebanon front. So it's been a lot, and a lot. We are focused on the West Bank, so this is where I watch much closely than any other place of the war areas. So in the West Bank, it's not really, a war, but there is a transition or even a revolution of annexation, basically, and a lot of violence and many other, developments on the ground. So it's been very intense, war-wise as well.
Yes, and we're so struck by that, just how opportunistic this government is, and how the settlers are seizing the moment and working unfortunately in tandem with the government at this moment. So we're grateful to be in partnership with organizations like you who are with Yesh Din who are drawing attention to this where the world is looking elsewhere. So thank you for that. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Are you able to go into what it's been like returning to focusing on the West Bank while amidst everything else that's going on in the country and the region?
So first of all, let me just say we are really grateful for your support and we really appreciate it. Yeah, I think we are struggling getting some attention to what's going on in the West Bank. I think it's growing. Like, as you know, there has been some sanctions. There has been the ICJ ruling about the situation, the legal situation in the West Bank and the other occupied territories. So I think we're doing okay with that. In Israel, it's more challenging, I think, like to get the attention of the Israeli population. I can't really blame anyone because it's really hard. We have a lot, like the news cycle here is crazy. Even now, when the operation in Lebanon started, it's really hard even to talk about the hostages anymore. So the attention span is very short. And people have a lot to worry about. People, worry about their life, their safety, and their loved ones. So it is hard. I think we're doing okay with that. But we really worry about the future. We are entering in a week or so into the harvest season, and that's just an example. So this tends to be anyway a season of a lot of violence and a challenge for us to get people to be able to harvest their olive trees and to actually be safe while doing it. And it seems like it's going to be very violent here. If the military will allow people to even leave the villages to go to the lands and actually harvest. So it's like two kind of efforts that we are now trying to make sure that this will all be will go okay and be allowed. Not the easiest in a way, because it's really hard to also argue now with kind of security justifications made by the army, and the fact that they have lower manpower to allocate for the West Bank. Anyway, the Jewish holidays tend to be times of settler violence because there is vacation from the schools, and people have time, and a lot of times they go straight from the synagogue to the fields to kind of riot and confront the Palestinians. So we have field researchers that are going to the field, to the West Bank. We really worry about their safety. It's not the safest for them to go right now. Just a week ago, one of the field researchers was driving home from work, and he got hit by a stone thrown by settlers who constantly block roads and just throw stones at Palestinian cars. So there's a lot of, I think, things to consider while trying to maintain, routine activity. Yeah, I forgot what was the question.
No, it sounds like you're maintaining plenty. I think I've been struck this whole time just how clear your sense of purpose and direction is, because it's amazing that you're able to do this work in this environment, and even I remember on October 17th when you wrote about your experience for Haaretz, you wrote that as the last 20 years prove, and even more so the events of this horrific Shabbat, all the military might on earth will not provide defense and security. You've been saying this obviously before October 7th, but saying it since, and with your experience, and so that clarity has been something we've been hearing out in the diaspora. Is that something that you're finding people are hearing over there?
Yeah, something like me. I got a lot of support, or a lot of criticism also, but a lot of support for the article and ever since. Of course, in our small human rights community, people share the same thoughts and feelings. But I think more than that, I got a lot of support from people from my kibbutz, for example. And most of my family feels the same way and talks the same way. So I think Israel is really divided on that. So there's a lot of people who feels like, we need to get even and to maintain our dignity, but also deterrence and, military kind of threat in a way, to show everyone Israel is strong, and to have them like fear of the reaction of Israel if they attack Israeli citizens. And I think a lot of others are realizing, and I really hope more people will realize that, and I really still hope that maybe it's a process and it takes time to, as I said, to digest what happened. But I really hope that in the future, more people will see that there is no military answer and no forceful answer to this complicated, really complicated situation. And the only way out is through negotiations and peace agreements at the end of a long and I guess very challenging process. But still, I think this should be the goal. And I think when we look around and we see the relationship with Egypt and Jordan, who used to be, bitter enemies of Israel. It's not my generation, but my parents' generation can tell stories about how far away and unreachable this seemed to be before the peace agreements, and then came the peace agreements and changed the reality. So I think this is something we all need to aspire to and hope for. And I find it really depressing that a lot of Israelis has no hope in that sense, and that they do believe that you can rely on your sword for eternity, which I don't think it's sustainable in any way. And I think it's also not only that it's not sustainable, it's not a good way of living. And I'm a secular person. I think we live once. And it's really sad and unfortunate that this is how we spend our lives. And a lot of people in this region, that's how they spend their lives. And having to know a lot of grief this year, I feel that even stronger than before. I always felt that that should be spared and life should be cherished. And this year I feel it even more strong than ever. And that this vicious cycle of violence must end.
Amen, amen. Siv, I think that's the perfect note to end off on. I think we are all hoping and praying for that. We're all feeling hopeful that we know we can't repeat these cycles of violence. And so we're so grateful for you for taking that message to the world, especially on such a difficult day. Thank you, Ziv. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Really.
Well, I don't know about you, but I know that those conversations were deeply healing for me. Nothing can make this day easy. Nothing can make this year easy. But I truly believe with people like this, going through what they're going through and recommitting to the cause that we are united by, we have a clear sense of where we need to go in this, and we need to see an end to the loss of innocent civilian life and a return of the hostages. And I'm glad to be united with you all in this community around those values. So with that, we'll pause for a moment of reflection. We're fortunate to have Rabbi Jeffrey Kamens, the senior rabbi of Temple Emmanuel, with us. And we'll hear from, he will lead us in a mourner's Kaddish, and then we'll move to a moment's silence. Rabbi Kamens, are you available to lead us in a Kaddish? Oh, we might just need to unmute you. Apologies. I think I've unmuted you there.
I'm actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm actually here in the sanctuary at Emmanuel Synagogue, and so I thought it'd be an appropriate place to say Kaddish. And it was a very moving time. I actually, my first encounter with Israel was as a volunteer on Kibbutz Nirim. So I know the area well, and I was there in June at Kibbutz Nahal Oz, and to see the destruction is incredible. I'll read the Psalm of David first, just because it's appropriate to read a psalm and before Kaddish. And I know people are secular and have different approaches to their faith at this time, but we're just part of all that was, is, and will be. And peace is always possible if we put our hearts and minds to it and work together to create that. I'll add one other thing. Michael, I'm going to just say, and I met amazing Israelis and Palestinians when I was in Israel, and I know NIF is hoping to bring some of those people out next year to give us even more hope and more light, and may that be so. Mizmor le David Adonai roi lo exor bino deshi arbit senio me menachot yanachaleni nashi yoshovev yanchenu maglet tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begeit samavet lo yara ki atayim yedi shivtecha mishantecha hemenachmoni tarok lefana shochan neged soradai di shanta b'shem roshi kosira vaya ach tov chesidu defuni ko yimei chaya v'shavti bevet Adonai lo yamim. A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God gives me repose in green meadows and guides me over calm waters. God will revive my spirit and direct me on the right path, for that is the way. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for the ever-loving presence is at my side. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of eternal presence forever. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zaman kari v'imru, amen. Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevarach Le'olam Elamei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei D'Kodesh HaBarichu. Le'olam kol birchata v'shirata tishkbata v'nechbata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemai v'chaim. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom bimramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yeshvei Tevel v'yimru amen. May the one who brings peace to the universe bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all humanity. And we say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. We'll now proceed with a moment's silence for the lives lost on that day. Thank you all. As we unite together on this day in our grief, may we stay united around the values that brought us here together, the values of justice, equality, peace, and security for all who live in the region. May we be united by a desire and prayer and hope for a change in leadership that allows a change in the reality on the ground. May we see a ceasefire deal and a hostage deal and an end to this violence. Thank you all for being on, and I hope you have a day filled with meaning and reflection. Thank you all.